We are back again to talk about yet another Thomas Partey injury. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Everything Arsenal. Latest news on Thomas Partey. Unfortunately, he's injured again, and there's a lot to talk about on Thomas Partey. Unfortunately, I feel so sad for him, and I feel so sad for us because there's a lot of people who've been, holding on to. I can't wait for Partey to return. He's finally back against Liverpool, and then boom, another injury before he's even played. It's very, very unfortunate. But before I give you my thoughts on it, let's go through the news on Thomas Partey for today. Today's news. So Arteta did his conference, and this is what he had to say. Thomas Partey had a little setback a few days ago. Unfortunately, he's not available. That's the first part of it. And let's use this one from Chris Whitley. We don't know if it's a few days or weeks. He felt something in a very similar area and he wasn't able to train the last few days. So Thomas Partey, obviously, he was back in training. He's been back in training like since we were in Dubai, and then obviously just before he played Nottingham Forest, and between the time we played Crystal Palace and the time we played Nottingham Forest, he's been back in training. He's been training regularly with the team, and we actually expected him to be back against Nottingham Forest, at least on the bench. I mean, we talked about him potentially being on the bench. I asked you guys, listen, would you start him against Forest, or would you give him like 20, 25 minutes to play against them, and then start against Liverpool, our biggest game of the season so far? What would you do? And many said, listen, give him 10 minutes from the bench and then start him for the crucial game against Liverpool. And I purposely did a poll a couple of days ago asking you guys, the question was, assuming Thomas Partey is not there, who would you start in midfield? And in my head, I was like, listen, if he didn't play against, obviously, if he didn't play against Nottingham Forest, even if he wasn't even on the bench, there's a chance he might not play against Liverpool. That's why I put that question for you guys, like, what would you do with the midfield? Because you cannot just like sit down and say, I'm waiting for Thomas Partey. You cannot do that. With this injury record that I'm about to read for you, you cannot do that. So this season, he's obviously only played 4 games, just 4 games. Remember, we're in February already. He's played just 4 games. He's basically missed the entire Champions League campaign. He didn't play for us in the Champions League, I'm pretty sure. If you also count the big games, like against Liverpool away from home, he didn't play. Basically, he's going to miss all 3 Liverpool games. He didn't play against Aston Villa, against Newcastle, like those games that you really want Thomas Partey. Against a Burnley at home, against a Sheffield at home, against even a Brighton at home, you can survive without Thomas Partey. But the bigger games, against Liverpool away, against Man City away, those are the kind of games you want Thomas Partey playing, because you know the kind of player that he is and the kind of additions he will bring to your team. By this injury record, he got a groin injury. He missed 7 games and ended up missing 31 days. He also missed 14 games after picking up the latest hamstring injury that kept him out for 85 days. Now, he's been back from that, but yet again, he's picked up another injury, a third different injury in the season already. Now, last season, he was able to stay fit for majority of it. He only picked up a knock that kept him out for 2 games and a thigh issue that kept him out for 4. But even the previous seasons, he missed 18 games in the 2021-22 season. In his debut season for Arsenal, he missed a total of 21 games. That's a lot of games he's been missing, man. He's played like 85 Premier League games for Arsenal in 3.5 seasons, which is very minimal. I mean, if you count the same number of games that Declan Rice has played in that number at that time, I'm sure it's like 100 and something, 140 or something like that. The best ability in football is availability. That's why I absolutely love players like White and Odegaard and guys like that, because if a player is always available and you can always count on them, you know what, you can even throw in Havertz in that list, Declan Rice, those players who are always there, Carabao Cup, Champions League, Premier League, all that. Those are the players you can depend on. Now, injury is not Partey's fault. He doesn't wish to be injured. I'm sure he'd want to play and help Arsenal to win the title. It's not his fault. But remember, we are Arsenal fans before we are Thomas Partey fans. So we have to do what is good for us. And I think at the end of this season, we'll have to have a very maybe, let's just call it conversation. Let's just say that. But for others, it would be a sad conversation. For others, it would be, a happy conversation, because some actually want him to be sold. But considering he's turning 31, I guess we have to really move on. And at the end of last season, a lot of people are talking about getting a striker and midfield and a defender. And I was actually saying get 2 midfielders, because you never know with Thomas Partey. You never know what would happen with him. He can get injured anytime. And that is exactly what you've seen this season. And the problem is, is not even getting injured in the game. You know, all these three injuries this season, I don't even think any of them has occurred in the game. The hamstring injury, it was like, I don't know, during training or just his, you know, just definitely not in the game. We just saw that Thomas Partey is going to be out because he had just returned against Man City. And this one that he's just picked up right now, obviously, he's not played a game and he's picked up another injury. It's not even like he's playing and then getting injured on the pitch. It's like off the pitch. And it's a mess for us because just imagine if we didn't sign Rice and we said, listen, let's go with Thomas Partey again. Let's go with Jorginho. Let's go with Odegaard and Fabio Vieira, Smith Rowe. It would be a nightmare because Partey is never there. We'd have to have depended on Jorginho from August to January, and with the FFP situation, maybe until the end of the season. So Declan Rice was actually a very, very good signing for us. A player was always available. A player was very, very good in that midfield. Basically changed everything about us. So just our mentality and everything that midfield as well, or added to the mentality that we already had from last season. But Thomas Partey, yet another injury. For those fans who are always like, we're going to wait for Thomas Partey, let's see what he does when he comes back. Because when I asked that question the other day, which midfield would you put there? The options were, would you start Jorginho, Rice, and Odegaard? Would you start Rice, Odegaard, and Havertz? Or Rice, Odegaard, and Smith Rowe, Rice, Odegaard, and Trossard? Those are the four options. And someone said, forget about the other players, just play Rice, Partey, and Odegaard. You cannot have that approach with Partey. You cannot just say, forget about the other players and focus on Partey. You're going to be disappointed because the other players are always there. Let's say Havertz, Trossard are always there. Smith Rowe is not always there. But unfortunately, Thomas Partey is not always there. And as much as we love him, as much as we want him to play every game and help us, as much as we want to see that midfield combination between him and Rice and Odegaard, I don't think you're going to see it many times. So there's nothing we can do about it right now. We just have to survive until the end of the season. But at the end of the season, we definitely have to have a conversation about it. I think we definitely have to get a replacement. He's turning 31. So it's not like, let's say, there's a lot of players who are injury prone. Like, as Arsenal fans, we know a lot of them. Aaron Ramsey, Jack Wilshere, Abu Diaby. You can even add Cazorla on that list. We had a lot of players who always got injured, and Rosicki probably top of that list. Very, very good players who are always injured. But we had to move on after all. We had to move on from Rosicki. I didn't want Cazorla to leave Arsenal. We had to move on because there's nothing we'd have done. We had to move on from those players. If you want to win titles, you have to have players who are available. You know, we cannot depend on Jorginho for 38 games. We cannot depend on Rice for 38 games throughout the season. They'll get tired. They'll pick up suspensions. They'll get injuries. We needed a backup, and Thomas Partey is not there. And other teams also have those kind of problems. Like Reece James is always injured, for example. But if you compare the two, the age, Partey's like heading towards his mid 30s, or he's just turned 30 years, but he's turning 31. But the others still have time to recover. And for someone like a Reece James, it was a case of let him do surgery and let's see how he recovers. For Partey's different injuries, hamstring, groin, thigh, different injuries, and it's quite unfortunate, man. Now, Atta did say it could be a few days or a few weeks. So let's hope it's a few days. Let's hope we do see him against the next game is against West Ham next week. Is still a very, very big game for us. And also considering Rice hasn't been very good against West Ham this season, Partey could help us in that. But what advice? Don't just sit there and be like, okay, we're going to wait for Partey. We're going to have Partey against West Ham. No. If he comes back, he comes back. If he's not fit, he's not fit. We just have to wait until the day is actually we see him on the bench on the starting lineup. Then we're happy. But for now, we just wait and see what happens. But we have to choose the midfield that plays against Liverpool. So I have to throw to you that question again. Who would you start against Liverpool now that Partey is out? Would you now Rice and Odegaard are definitely starting? Who would be a third midfielder? Jorginho, right? Jorginho, Trossard, Havertz, or Smith Rowe? Who would you start between those four in midfield? Obviously, with Jorginho, that allows Rice to push forward, but with the other three, Rice will sit in the number 6 position, and then the others will push forward. What would you do in the midfield for that particular game? But with all that said, quick recovery to Thomas Partey. Hopefully, we still see him before the end of the season. If he comes back, he can still play a role for us. In the Champions League or something, or in the Premier League games like against Man City and all that. But I'm not going to put all my eggs in the Thomas Partey basket. And no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say if he comes back, he comes back. If he's not fit, he's not fit. There's nothing we can do about it. But let's see what happens with Partey and the next game in midfield. Let me know what you make of that. Have you given up on Partey? Are you still hopeful he's going to recover? Would you keep him for next season, or would you try and sell him? Another thing is, if he's always injured, it always also becomes a problem to sell him. But hey, let's see. We'll talk about transferring or keeping him at the end of the season. For now, we need to hope that he comes back as soon as possible and helps us before the end of the season. Thank you for watching. I'll catch up with you on the next one.